Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our brand new rookie series webinar sessions. Today we'll be doing Intro to Wheelchair Tennis. Just to go over a little bit about how this webinar is going to work, we have reserved time at the end of the session for a Q&A portion. So the bulk of the presentation, your microphone will be muted, but we'll open it up for questions towards the end of the session. You can also feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat throughout, or you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. And you also might notice a small screen with different videos from the panelists on your screen. If those are in the way of the presentation, you do have the option to minimize those screens, so feel free to do that as well. All right, we'll get going. There we go. All right, just to provide some background about why we started these rookie series sessions, we wanted to just provide some general information about our organization, provide some guidance about who can participate in adaptive sports and other programs we offer. And then we wanted to get into more specific information about our wheelchair tennis programs, provide an overview of wheelchair tennis in general, and then talk about different participation opportunities, and provide our competition and practice schedules as well, if you want to get involved in our programs. And then we also wanted to provide an opportunity for you to hear from current athletes. So we have an athlete with us today that'll share about his experience, and then we'll answer any questions you may have. So my name is Brooke Kieber. I'm a program manager here in Wayne County, and I help run the wheelchair tennis program for Wayne County. And then with me today is Alexic Yoder. He's a program manager assistant and also helps with tennis. And then we're happy to have Evan Heller on as a guest speaker. He's an Adaptive Sports Ohio athlete and is a current Auburn University student athlete. And I'll provide a more formal introduction of Evan when we get to the guest speaker portion. All right, to start, I'll just provide an introduction about our organization in case you aren't familiar with us. We're a nonprofit that provides a variety of community-based and interscholastic adaptive sports opportunities throughout Ohio. We were founded in 2009 by Lisa Followay, and the idea for the organization was inspired by her son, Casey, who was born with spina bifida. Casey was always active as a kid and loved sports growing up. He wanted a chance to play just like his peers, and Lisa realized how sports immensely benefited Casey. And so she felt that others with physical disabilities should have that same opportunity to play sports. So that's really how Adaptive Sports Ohio was born. And our mission is to remove barriers to ensure that individuals with physical disabilities have a chance to play and utilize sport to elevate ability and empower futures. We are headquartered in Worcester, Ohio, but have some satellite offices in Cleveland and Youngstown. We have active programming in 6 Ohio counties, but through our interscholastic opportunities and our annual summer dream camp, our reach is really statewide. A question we get a lot is who are adaptive sports for, who's eligible to participate. Really, it's for individuals with a physical disability that limits their ability to participate in a typical sport. So some examples of common disability types we get in our programs include spinal cord injuries, spina bifida, amputees, individuals with visual impairments, cerebral palsy, scoliosis, etc. There are many other disability types that we have in our programs, but that's just an overview for you of some of the disability types. A common misconception about a lot of our sports and programs is that you have to be an everyday wheelchair user to play the sports. Even though a lot of our sports have wheelchair in the name, wheelchair tennis being one of them, you don't have to be an everyday wheelchair user to participate. And actually, we get a lot of athletes that aren't everyday wheelchair users. And adaptive sports modify a typical sport by either adding a piece of equipment or modifying a playing rule. So if you have a typical sport you like and enjoy, I guarantee that that sport can be adapted for your needs. We offer a wide variety of sports, and we really break them down into two different types, community-based programs and interscholastic programs. Our community-based programs are open to all ages and disabilities, and we offer both competitive and recreational opportunities. So if you want to get more competitive, more elite competition, you can choose to travel with us to different competitions and participate competitively that way. Or if you would rather just learn the sport, have fun, stay active, you can participate recreationally. And all equipment is provided for every one of our programs. We have a large inventory of equipment that we transport to and from programs that our athletes can use during programs. And then the sports do vary by location. So it's not guaranteed that every one of these sports is going to be available at each our Worcester, Youngstown, and Cleveland locations. But some of them are available in multiple locations, like sled hockey, wheelchair basketball, power soccer is available in almost all of them. And then with our interscholastic programs, these are school-based opportunities. So they provide an opportunity for students with a physical disability to represent and compete for their school teams. So we assist athletes with getting involved on their junior high and high school track and field teams. So if they want to participate as a seated athlete in track and field, we provide the racing chairs and loan throwing chairs to the athletes for field competitions. And then we offer at the beginning of the season an athlete and coaches training to go over the basics of how basic chair mechanics and racing guidelines. We've also started a wheelchair basketball program. It's a district-wide program, so individuals in 1st through 12th grade with a physical disability can compete on their school wheelchair basketball team. So we had 6 teams in the league last year, and we're looking to expand that every year, hopefully doubling this year and tripling within the next few years. So we're hoping to expand that wheelchair basketball program to different areas of Ohio as well. So tonight's the first night we're offering these new rookie series sessions. We plan to offer at least one per month on the first Wednesday of each month. So coming up on June 2nd, our next sessions, those are hand cycling and wheelchair lacrosse. And then in July, we have wheelchair softball that really rounds out our summer programming. So these are all going to be added on Facebook as Facebook events. So you can join there to receive the links. We can also, if you have a specific session in mind that you really want to be a part of, I'll provide my contact information at the end of the session, and you can feel free to shoot me an email and I'll make sure you have the registration info for that particular session. We're also working to get each of these sessions on our website, on a page on our website so that you can register there. So working on that. All right, so moving into details about wheelchair tennis. Equipment is actually pretty minimal compared to other sports. Participants do use a manual sports chair or a power chair. And then you need a tennis racket, which is just a standard size racket that stand-up players would use. You need some tennis balls, and there are actually different types of tennis balls. You can see Joshua here has the typical yellow tennis balls that you're probably used to seeing. Rebecca here is using what's called a red ball. So that ball is just slightly larger and travels 75% slower. So it's a good developmental ball. So if you're new to the sport, that's a good ball to start with. There's also foam balls available if you're brand new. So those balls are much larger than a typical tennis, much easier to make contact with. So if you're just getting introduced to the sport, there are options available to help you develop as you grow with the sport. The tennis is played on, wheelchair tennis is played on a typical tennis court. In the United States, we're used to hard courts, and that's where you'll see everywhere. Most places have public courts available at different community parks. A lot of high schools have tennis courts, most colleges do. So they are accessible. There are also grass courts and clay courts that wheelchair tennis is played on. This isn't quite as typical in the US. You'll see those more overseas, but just wanted to point out that there are different court types. So in tennis, you can play either singles, which is one-on-one, or doubles, 2 versus 2. These outer edges, the wider sidelines here, are the double sidelines. So the doubles just has a larger court than singles. These more narrow sidelines are for singles. So the playing area is just a little bit smaller. And then you have the service boxes, 4 service boxes here in the middle. So in tennis, players will serve from the baseline. So if you're serving on the right side, you'll serve cross court, and you'll want to get it across the net into this box cross court. If you're serving on the left side here, you'll serve again cross court, and you'll need to land the ball into this box to get it into play. There are different divisions in wheelchair tennis. I already mentioned singles and doubles, but you can also get mixed doubles, which is the same as doubles, 2 versus 2. You just have 1 male and 1 female per team. There's also quad tennis. So quad tennis players have loss of function in at least 3 limbs. So they might have more trouble gripping the racket. And so assistive devices might be needed to hold the racket, whether that's Velcro straps, maybe special gloves, or they might just need athletic tape wrapped around their hand, taping their racket to their hand to allow them to hold onto that racket easier. And with the quad tennis players, typically you'll see more power chair users there. And then also there is integrated tennis. So a really cool thing about wheelchair tennis is that it's easily played both with and against able-bodied players. So you can compete against an able-bodied player. As a wheelchair athlete, you would just follow wheelchair tennis rules, which I'll go over the major differences here in a minute. But then that able-bodied player will just play by typical able-bodied rules. All right, so the basic structure of tennis, you have community-based, which is us, in different leagues around the United States. The United States Tennis Association is the governing body for wheelchair tennis in the US. If you were to compete in a USTA sanctioned tournament, there are typically 3 different divisions, A, B, and C, with A being your elite tennis players, B being kind of in the middle, and C being your beginners. And so players can kind of self-identify with their skill level when placing themselves into tournaments. And then wheelchair tennis athletes can also compete on their high school tennis teams. So if you're interested, we can provide resources to get involved. Like I mentioned, wheelchair tennis, you can compete against able-bodied athletes. So it would be pretty simple to join onto your high school tennis team. So if you would be interested in that, please reach out and we can definitely help you with that process. And then there is also collegiate wheelchair tennis. There's 8 schools currently, and they have nationals each year. That's also governed by the USTA. And then with professional tennis, there's wheelchair tour events. So over 150 events in 40 countries throughout the world, where professional players compete for prize money and also world rankings. And then if you're familiar with the 4 major Grand Slam events for tennis, each one of those 4 tournaments also offer a wheelchair tennis division. You also have World Team Cups. So 1 week out of the year, more than 30 countries converge on a location to compete in a team format to try to become team world champion. And then wheelchair tennis is also a Paralympic sport. So you'll probably see it this summer with the Tokyo Games. All right, getting into the major differences, there actually aren't a lot of big differences between wheelchair tennis and stand-up tennis. The biggest one and the most apparent one when watching is that wheelchair tennis uses a 2 bounce rule. So players can allow the ball to bounce twice before they have to hit it back over the net to their opponent. That first bounce, if they do allow it to bounce twice, the first bounce has to be within the boundaries of the court, but the second bounce can land anywhere, and you still have to hit it. And then another difference is that clearly with wheelchair tennis, you wouldn't be able to have any lateral movement or the ability to elevate. So you have to be very aware of the angles you're taking to the ball, and wheelchair tennis players have to be in constant movement around the court, just because when a player gets stopped in their chair, it's a lot harder to build that momentum to get going quickly. So they have to just be constantly moving. With wheelchair tennis, there's also less preparation time when they're going to hit the ball, because players must propel the wheelchair with their hands and arms while also holding the racket. They don't have as much time to prepare that racket to hit. So a difference with that is in stand-up tennis, and I'll go over the different types of hits and strokes here in a moment. But when a stand-up player hits a backhand ground stroke, which is on their non-dominant side, they'll typically use two hands when they swing the racket just to have more control. That's really not an option with wheelchair tennis, because wheelchair tennis players need to have a hand on the wheel at all times, so they're always prepared to move. So they'll use a one-handed backhand instead. And then with serving in stand-up tennis, pretty much you'll always see them using an overhead serve. But with wheelchair tennis players, if a player doesn't have the function to do an overhead serve, they can elect to drop hit it and drop and hit the ball over the net instead. All right, going over the different strokes. So you have ground strokes, which is when you let the ball bounce and then you hit the ball back over the net. So with ground strokes, you have the forehand ground stroke, which is on when you're swinging the racket and hitting the ball on the dominant side of your body. And you have backhand, which is just swinging and hitting the ball on your non-dominant side of the body. And then you have serves, like I mentioned. If an athlete's able, they want to use an overhead serve just because you have a lot more power on the serve. And when you get more advanced, you can even add spin on your serves. And that's the same with ground strokes and volleys as well. Once you get more advanced, you can really manipulate your shots a lot better by adding topspin or backspin on your shots. So a volley is just when you hit the tennis ball straight out of the air without letting it bounce. I will say that the most difficult part typically for people to grasp in tennis is the scoring. And to be honest, I started playing tennis, stand-up tennis, my freshman year of high school, and I think it took me just about the entire season until I felt really comfortable scoring a game. So if you leave today confused about scoring, one thing that we're trying to emphasize within our own programs this year and moving forward is really learning how to score those matches, how the point system works. So if a player would want to compete more competitively in a USTA tournament, that they're prepared for that. So just to introduce the basics of scoring here today, you have you have points, games, and sets. You need to win 4 points to win a game, 6 games to win a set, and you have to win 2 sets to win the match. And so scoring uses different terms. So when you have 0 points, the term used is love. And then when you have a tied score, the term used is all. So if it's 0-0 in tennis, you would say love all, or 15, if it's 15-15, you would say 15 all. So the scoring goes for points, love, 15, 30, 40. And then after 40, you need 1 more point to win the game. And with tennis, with a lot of tennis, you need to win by 2. So with points, you need to win by 2 points. So that's where the terms deuce and advantage come into play. If the score is tied at 40-40, That's called deuce. And the next point, so if I'm serving, it's deuce, and I win the next point, I now have advantage. I have a 1 point advantage over my opponent, and I need 1 more point to win the game. So if I'm serving, I win the point that I'm at add in. If I serve again and lose the point, the score would go back to deuce. So we're back to being tied. We're both back to needing 2 more points to win the game. So it's a very complicated scoring system, and something our programs are definitely going to focus on working on this year. So getting into details about our program, we offer practices in Worcester twice a week at Christmas Run Park. It's going to last from May 3rd through June 3rd. So Monday nights are what we call recreational practices, where we're really focusing on learning the fundamentals of tennis, going through different fundamental drills, and learning just the basics of it. So it's a more fun atmosphere. And then Thursday nights, we wanted to offer a more competitive opportunity, and that opportunity to get used to playing in matches. So Thursdays are match nights. So if players choose to compete in these Thursday night matches, we play on 2 different courts. So we offer 1 or 2 games from 6:30 to 7:30, and then 2 more games, 7:30 to 8:30. Those that signed up for Thursday sessions, we've made the competitive schedule so that they're competing in round robin matches for the first 3 weeks of our competitive Thursday sessions. And then the final 2 weeks of those Thursday night sessions, we'll use the round robin results to seed them for what we call our ASPO Open tournament. So that's Worcester. We also have wheelchair tennis in Youngstown, which we had planned to begin our Youngstown program in May, but our Youngstown program manager has decided to return to her hometown in Texas, so we will be delaying the start of that program. Our plan is to begin tennis sessions in Youngstown starting in June, so we'll have more details soon about our Youngstown program. So if you're interested in our Youngstown program, please still feel free to reach out to me, and I can make sure we get you all of the details for that. So if after today you're ready to give wheelchair tennis a try, you can contact our staff, you can contact me. I'll provide our contact information here at the end of the session. So once you reach out to me, I can send you a registration link and an information packet that just has our detailed schedule for you. Once you're registered, really all you have to do is be ready to practice and have fun. And again, we do provide all of the equipment. If you do have your own tennis racket, your own sports chair, you are welcome to bring and use that. But we do have equipment for you if needed. All right, so moving on to our guest speaker today. I'm really excited to have Evan Heller here. Evan played on our Worcester Generals interscholastic wheelchair basketball team. And actually last summer was really his first time playing organized wheelchair tennis with us. And he ended up picking up the sport very quickly and is our reigning ASPO Open champion. Basketball is Evan's primary sport, and he signed on to play wheelchair basketball at Auburn University. So just finished up his freshman season at Auburn. And he also played with Auburn's wheelchair tennis team this season. So we'll hear more from Evan about that experience. So Evan, thank you so much for joining us today to discuss your experience with wheelchair tennis. I guess, can you just start by telling us how you got involved in adaptive sports, and then how many years you've been playing?
Yeah, so I really got involved with adaptive sports through Adaptive Sports Ohio, and really this is my second year starting wheelchair tennis. Again, my main sport is wheelchair basketball, and I started that in 8th grade.
Awesome. So I guess, how has your involvement in adaptive sports impacted your overall well-being?
Well, it really has impacted me greatly. So in 8th grade when I started, I was really hesitant to start, and once I started playing wheelchair basketball, I absolutely loved it. And from then on, really, I kept going, and now I'm here at Auburn, and it really has just impacted my life greatly. I've met so many great people, and yeah.
So last summer was the first time you really played competitive or even organized wheelchair tennis. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? Were you surprised by how much you enjoyed it last summer, and how you felt when you first started playing? You seemed to pick it up really quickly. So can you just talk about that experience?
Yeah, so it was definitely difficult at first, just holding the racket and being at like having to push the wheelchair. It was definitely hard at first, but I love sports in general, so I love tennis, and really, I started in, like practicing at a Dutch Sports Ohio, just in the, like open practices, and I got pretty good. And then once we got to the tournament, I actually won, so it was really awesome. And from then, I my coach, who's Coach Rob, and he's coach for the Auburn, he wanted me to play wheelchair tennis for them. So I picked that up for them. And then I was going to attend the college nationals this year, but I had a basketball thing. So next year I plan on going to college nationals and playing tennis.
That is just awesome, Evan. I can't believe after just one experience playing wheelchair tennis and you picked it up that fast. And now playing collegiate tennis. That's just wild, but really awesome. Um, do you think that wheelchair basketball, your experience playing wheelchair basketball really helped you excel with wheelchair tennis? Do you think those two sports kind of mesh well with one another?
Absolutely. So like they kind of help each other out. So once basketball season's over, I can just train with tennis really, and it helps with your chair skills. And it's just like it just keeps me active and fit really.
Right, going back to your experience playing tennis at Auburn, can you talk a little bit about how collegiate tennis is structured as far as the different divisions and everything?
Yeah, so the USTA held college nationals this year in Orlando, and it was actually the largest field ever. So there's 27 athletes, which was awesome, and there's 8 schools. So like people who are listening now, you could really play tennis in college. So it's really awesome. It's a growing sport, and yeah, there's an A division, a B division, a C division, like you said earlier. So the A is like the really, really good athletes, like Paralympians, and then it goes down from there. So B and C. So next year I'll probably be in the C division.
So structured similar to community-based wheelchair tennis with the USTA as well. So if someone wasn't sure about trying wheelchair tennis, maybe they were on the edge about signing up, what would you say to them?
I really just say give it a try. I remember when I was in 8th grade, I was very hesitant to try wheelchair basketball. I didn't know what it was like, but once I gave it a try, I absolutely loved it, and I just took off from there. And now I'm here at Auburn. So really, just give it a try. You never know what might happen. You might go to college and play tennis.
Evan, we got a question in the chat, and it's just asking if you're an everyday wheelchair user.
I am. So at Auburn University, it's really spaced out. So I use a wheelchair, like everyday wheelchair there.
Okay.
All right, and we will go ahead and open up for questions either for Evan about his experience, or if you have questions for us, feel free to ask in the chat. Or there's also a function option where you can raise your hand. So if you raise your hand, we can go ahead and unmute you if you want to ask your question out loud.
All right, Evan, here's another question for you. It's just asking, is the social interaction in our programs as fun as the competition?
Oh yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I've made a lot of friends within this organization, and I mean, they're still my friends now. And I mean, when we're playing tennis, we might trash talk a little bit, but it's all in like good fun.
All right, it looks like Jeanette, do you have a question?
Tell me or explain a little bit better. My son is in an electric wheelchair, so I'm not sure. He has most function of just his right hand. So how would he go about using and moving at the same time? Like, because obviously he's not capable of using his left hand and moving the chair and still holding on to the tennis racket. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. We would definitely, it would help to see him in action. We would have to work with him to try to figure that out. I'm not sure I can answer that.
Some people use like head arrays or head controls they attach to your power chair to help with that movement. And then he would just have to learn to use his head to control his chair while he has his right hand holding the tennis racket. That way then he can play just like everybody else, and we obviously adapt it that way.
And are those balls that are slower moving, is there a specific name for those? Or are those available somewhere that I could purchase?
I can definitely send you some options. I would say just starting out, I would recommend those foam balls. And I think if you just search foam tennis balls, they're pretty standard. But yeah, Jeanette, if you would like, I can definitely send you a link to some options.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any other questions?
Questions?
All right. If not, go ahead and point out that our contact information is on the screen. My email is brooke.kieber@adaptivesportsohio.org. So feel free to email me, or you can call our office, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Even though I do the Worcester program, I'm also happy to answer questions about our Youngstown program. And we actually do also have plans to start in Cleveland later this summer. So if you're from the Cleveland area, stay tuned for details about that. But again, if you're interested in any one of those 3 programs, please reach out. We can get you on the email list. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you all again for joining us. And everyone have a fantastic night.